Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Richard Burke. I'm Executive Director of Western Liberty Network, and this is our organization's weekly training. We have these trainings every week at 1 o'clock on Saturday Pacific time. So they are free of charge, and anyone can join them at any time. We also record these trainings, and if you want to see a recording of this session, you can go to the www.westernlibertynetwork.org website, go to the training tab and scroll down until you see the training that you'd like to view. Click on it and it should begin playing immediately. Western Liberty Network is an organization consisting of myself, a board of directors, an advisory committee, and numerous volunteer trainers. Excuse me. Our purpose is to help activists reweave the fabric of our political culture by empowering them to take control over their own governance. We do this by building a farm team of trained local, nonpartisan office holders, citizen activists, and campaign volunteers. We train activists who in turn use their training for the campaigns and the causes that they care about. If you would like to support Western Liberty Network, simply go to the www.westernlibertynetwork.org website and click on the support tab. All contributions to Western Liberty Network are tax deductible. Western Liberty Network is a 501c3 educational organization. As such, we do not endorse or oppose any political party, candidate, ballot measure, or legislation. The statements and other forms of information provided by our various guest trainers and the participants of these trainings are entirely their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Western Liberty Network. To make sure that we have the best audio-visual experience possible, I will ask that everyone mute themselves and that if they are not muted, that they silence or put their phones on vibrate to avoid any distraction. And when you want to speak, simply unmute yourself. And when you're finished speaking, mute yourself again. This will minimize audio feedback and make sure we have really good sound. So with that out of the way, I would like to welcome all of you. This week's training is going to be about getting out the vote. If you are an Oregon activist, you know that our local nonpartisan elections, which are taking place all over the state, are coming up. They're going to be on May 18th. Ballots have to be in by 8 o'clock on May 18th to be counted. And there are over 3,500 positions across the state that are up for election. Of course, you will only vote for those who are in your particular community. But these are very important positions that affect our freedoms on a day-to-day level where we live. Congress is important, Salem is important, but simple things like, what does it cost for a business license? Can I build a granny flat on top of my garage? Can I cut down a tree in the area between the sidewalk and the road? A lot of just day-to-day decisions, what your water rates are, what your garbage rates are. All of these things are determined by local boards where you live. And so these are important governments that we need to be concerned about. And there are a lot of conservatives and libertarians running in these positions. And if you are one of these candidates or you are supporting any of these candidates, the objective of this training is to help you get out the vote. Now, getting out the vote in any election is obviously important because you've got to have people vote for the candidates you care about in order for them to have a chance to win. But in this particular election, it is even more important because these are low turnout elections. It is not uncommon for these local nonpartisan elections to attract only 17 to 20% of the electorate. And if you are a Washington activist viewing this training, you've got an election coming up too. Their filing deadline is May 17th for their local elections. And so they're going to have to be concerned about this too. But in low turnout elections, if you can get even a few people to turn out to vote, it will have more of an impact proportionally than in a high turnout election where 70 or 80% of them vote. So this is very, very important to do. And without too much effort, particularly in small local races, what you do as a consequence of this training can determine whether or not you or candidates you support win or lose. So I'm going to send through the chat window a file I'm going to send a file. It is the training document associated with this training today. Getting out the vote PDF, and I'll be going through this shortly. I'm also sending out another file, and this is a form I'll explain in a moment. Feel free to download these various documents, print them out, use them, share them, email them to people who you think might be able to benefit them. And then I will send a third file today, which is not written by myself. I'm adapting it. It's a little rough, but I still think it has some good information in it. And that involves more ways to convince someone to vote. So I have sent those. For those who are watching this recording at a later date, these documents are on file, and where you clicked to watch this recording, there's some text right to the side of it that includes links so you can download these very same files. Okay. Now, if anyone has any questions or comments or anything they'd like to relate during this training, please interrupt. Interaction is fine. And so with that, we'll get started. It is important when you're trying to get out the vote, it is important to know the psychology of getting people to vote. I have here that a 2012 Stanford University study found that people become more likely to vote in any given election if, one, they see voting as a part of their personal identity, and two, if they have a specific plan about when and where to vote. Keep this in mind whether you are an activist undertaking a personal or desktop GOTV plan, which is what this is asking you to do, or if you are working as a campaign volunteer or a campaign manager as a part of someone else's campaign. So what does that mean? It means basically, one, you want to make sure that when you ask someone to vote, that they understand it's a part of who they are. People are affiliated with a church. You know, they say their religious affiliation is part of their identity, who their family members are a part of their identity, their profession is a part of their identity, and their political affiliation is part of their identity. So if you say, you know, hi, Carla, how are you? I understand that we've talked many times before and that you've been a Republican or a Libertarian or whatever they are, that you've been a Republican for over 20 years. And that's quite a commitment. And she'll say something like, yeah, I've been a Republican a long time. Well, if you've done that, you've linked, you know, their affiliation to their identity. And then you can say, well, we've got an election coming up. And I think that, you know, as a longtime Republican, it's important that we support conservative candidates by voting for them. Don't you agree? And most of the time they will agree, especially if, you know, they are someone who's been active for a long time. If you've done that much, you've tied their political affiliation and the act of voting itself to their personal identity. That's really all it takes. You know, Carla, you've been a Republican for a long time, and I know that you understand that voting is important. It's a part of who I am. It's part of who you are, right? They say, yes, you succeeded in tying their political affiliation and the act of voting to their personal identity. You've got the battle half won. The second thing to do is to have them come up with a plan to vote. This doesn't have to be complicated. Well, Carla, I'm calling all my friends and I want to make sure that they vote so that, you know, the candidates we support have a better chance of winning. When do you plan to vote? Just ask, when do you plan to vote? Now, remember, you're not asking these people for money, and you're not asking them for your time other than the time it takes to vote. You are inviting them. You are, in fact, inviting them to use their franchise, to exercise their political power, reminding them that they have an opportunity to do so. And thereby, you are doing them a favor. And since you are doing them a favor, you don't have to feel like you're being intrusive. You don't have to feel like you're interrupting their day or annoying them. I mean, if they don't want to vote, if If they say, nope, I'm not going to vote, I'm done voting, forget it, say, okay, well, that's fine. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't bother you, and go away. And no one's going to be cheesed off, right? But you're doing these people a favor, so don't feel shy about asking them to vote. So those are the two things you need to do. One, make sure that they see the act of voting as part of who they are. And two, make sure that they have a plan to vote. If I ask them when they plan to vote and someone says, yeah, my wife and I, we were thinking about voting over dinner at our kitchen table next Wednesday night. That's a plan. It doesn't have to be a fancy plan, just a plan to vote. And if you've got those two things done, then it's very likely that they're going to actually vote. So if you know how to get them to vote, then the next thing to do is to reach the people you want to vote. I have sent you a form, which I'm going to bring up on screen. If I can master this share screen thing, I'll show it to you. Okay, does everybody see the Get Out the Vote, the personal Get Out the Vote campaign worksheet?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, I've sent you this file, and you can download it and print it off. This provides for 2 voters. So if you want to ask 100 people to vote, print off a bunch of these things. But this helps you track them. Write down a list of everybody you know, friends, family, coworkers, acquaintances, the people you do business with, whatever it is, all the people that you know, just your friends, and make a list of them and call them up. Just call them up. Or if you see them at work, take a moment during a break and talk to them. And what you're going to do is you're going to write down their name and their you don't have to fill out all this information. This is all, if you have voter lists, you can use this, but it's not necessary. And find out, hey, Bob, are you registered to vote by chance? And if they are, say yes. Click, you're registered to vote. Do you have your ballot yet? Okay. Have you voted yet? Okay, well, that's great. And then talk to them about voting and say, do you have a plan to vote? And if they do, when will they vote? Right. And put down how you contacted, these people. And if you have any notes, put them down here and go on to the next person. And what you're going to do is you're going to come up with a list of people who you've asked to vote, and you'll be able to track whether or not they did. You can follow up, a few days later and say, hey, I know we talked about voting. Did you get a chance to mail your ballot in? And if they did, well, thanks a lot. That's fantastic. And if they didn't, say, well, we're all busy. When do you think you might get to that? If you're annoying, they'll tell you to go away and just thank them for their time and go away. But again, you're doing them a favor by giving them an opportunity to exercise their franchise. So go ahead and download this form and print off as many as you want. Now, the idea of this training isn't just so that you can do your own Get Out the Vote campaign, individualized Get Out the Vote campaign, which is great, you should, but you can ask your friends. A lot of us are politically active. You can pass this information along and ask them to do the same. Most people might have a few friends who are in a different ideological camp than they are, but most of the friends that we have attitudes and ideologies similar to ourselves. So if we motivate the people that we know, we are more likely than not to have a net impact in favor of conservative candidates. And if you multiply this by 5, 6 people, even if it's just a few people, 3, 4 people, and you talk to a dozen people on some of these races, like sewer district, cemetery control district, water board, even school board, and some of these larger races, that can be the difference between victory and defeat. Are there any questions at this point? Anybody have any questions?
Oh,
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to close this actually, I think I'll bring it up later. And I'm going to bring up this one. Getting out the vote. I'm going to share the screen again. Okay, you should see the getting out the vote thing. Again, we've got the psychology of getting people to vote. Collect, organize, and prioritize your voter information. So what I would recommend is just get a pad of paper, like I said, and just start making a list of folks that you want to approach to vote. And then use the form that I gave you to help set up a plan to watch them. And just prepare your messaging. You know, I gave you an example of what you might say to somebody who you want to vote. You're going to say it in your own words, but basically it's going to amount to the same thing. You know, hi Bob, my name, you know, hi Bob, this is Rich. I'm doing some political work. I know that you've been a Republican for a long, long time. We've got this election up, and in these times, I know that you agree that it's important that we vote. Do you agree? Sure. Then I'm calling just to make sure that everyone, nobody misses this election, that you're able to vote. Are you going to vote? Oh, you are. Okay. Well, when do you plan to do that? Okay, great. Next Wednesday. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. You know, that's the way I would say it. Include the same basic items, but figure out a way that you're going to say it yourself before you start making phone calls so that you're comfortable. And then simply get to work. Most of the problem with get out the vote campaigns is that people say, yeah, let's do it. That's great. But they never actually do the work. You do the work, it'll get done. I want to make it very clear. Some of you might be active in your local or county political party. This is not meant to replace any get out the vote program that your county has or your political party has. This is meant to augment that. No one is as persuasive as a friend. Getting an anonymous phone call from a political party operative at a phone bank is great. It reminds people to vote and it has benefit, but it will never be as impactful as somebody calling somebody they know and leveraging that relationship to ask them to vote. So it's important that these individualized get out the vote campaigns augment get out the vote efforts that candidates or political parties undertake. It's really no more complicated than that. I'm going to bring up another document here. This is not my document. It was written by someone named Bridget Connolly. I've already taken out a few things that I didn't think were appropriate. She had in there, buy someone a gift and make them feel obligated to you. I don't think that's cool, so I took that out. But there are some good things here, and I'm going to eventually adopt some of this. But I sent this on the chat section too, so you can download this. You know, you can make an argument for popularity. If you get into a discussion, you can say, well, you know, everybody's voting. All my friends are voting. I've been calling people and everyone's getting ready to vote. You know, by doing this, you're creating a feeling like if they don't vote, they're left out, or they, you know, or simply they're isolated. The use it or lose it argument is always a very good one. You can say we're losing our freedoms very rapidly. And if we don't exercise our political power, we're going to lose them faster. So it's important that we use our ability to vote so that we don't lose our ability to vote. That's another good argument that you can make. Be likable and relatable. When you talk to people, just be yourself. Be relaxed. You know, if you sound strident and accusatory, you're going to put people off. So just be your normal, pleasant self. And remember that you're not telling them to do something. You're not ordering them to do something. You are inviting them to do something. You are inviting them to exercise their political franchise. And of course, you know, I've sort of mentioned this in the document we looked at before, but simply ask the person to vote. If you've ever been in sales, you know that the important thing is to close the sale, and you can't close the sale unless you ask for the sale. Simply ask them to vote. tell them, we all know this, but maybe some people who are not politically active that might be friends of ours may not know it intuitively, something that seems obvious to us. And that is, your voice can't be counted unless you vote. There is no way that you can make your voice heard in this election and get the outcome that'll benefit our nation and yourself if you do not actually vote. Point out that it shapes the future of the country. You can say, look, this may be an election and maybe some of the seats aren't so big, like the cemetery control board, or the 911 board, but this affects our daily lives. Sometimes, it can affect someone's actual life or death, but also you never know who gets elected to these positions that might, rise and become a significant political figure in the future. And if they become a significant political figure in the future, then they're going to affect this country, and they're going to affect the debates this country undertakes. One good example of that in Western Liberty Network is Mike Neerman. He got his start at Western Liberty Network's 2011 conference. That seems, in some ways, it seems so long ago. In some ways, it seems so recent. And now he's embroiled in a battle over public access to the Capitol, over, there are a lot of dimensions to that battle. Had he not become politically active, this wouldn't be a controversy that we're asked to take a position on right now. And if he is successful or if he's not, it's going to shape our state. So decisions that might seem small and insignificant today, even though they're not small and insignificant, could turn out to be decisions with a big import later. And so that's something you can tell folks. You can talk about different candidates. And you can say, well, look, we really want to elect this person because if we elect this person, we're going to have school boards that are more responsive to parents. We're not going to have critical race theory or whatever these things are. But if we elect this other person, then our school district's just going to go down the drain. That is another argument you can use. Make clear that their vote makes a difference. You can say there were a lot of races where just a handful of votes made a big difference. One really good example is the congressional race in Iowa that was decided by only 6 votes. Here in Oregon, years ago, there was a state legislator named Chuck Carpenter, a Republican who won his seat by only 7 votes. In these smaller elections, like water board, school board, and so forth, where not very many people vote in the first place, small numbers of votes, even 1 vote, can make a difference. Sometimes there are even ties. That usually happens a few places around the country every year. And it says here, drive the person to the polls. Well, that doesn't really, affect us because Oregon is a vote by mail state. And there are more and more vote by mail states for better or worse. But, if someone's having difficulty voting, find out. I had a friend once who had Parkinson's disease, and he had difficulty holding a pen. He had difficulty marking his ballot. Call someone if you know someone who has a problem like that. Let them know that you're there to assist them. It's important that you don't guide their decisions, but it is fine to assist them in the exercise of their political franchise. So those are a number of things you can do. But the important thing now is ballots in Oregon have been mailed and voting has started. Because of a number of controversies over the years, a lot of Oregonians have learned to hold their ballots until the last few days of the election. And because this is a low turnout election, there are going to be a lot of people who hang on to their ballots too long and don't vote at all. The point here being is that although it is late in the May 18th elections, if you execute a modest, individualized get out the vote program and ask a few of your friends and fellow political activists to do the same thing, there is still time in Oregon to have an impact for the candidates that you care about. And if you are a person either listening from Washington State or watching this recording from Washington State, you're going to have a lot more time to develop a strong get out the vote campaign. If you develop a strong get out the vote campaign, you are much more likely to have a successful election than if you don't. So this is designed to give you those tools. Are there any questions or comments about this? I don't see any questions or comments. Does everyone have the documents that we uploaded? I think someone came in, iPhone 503-432-9394. I'm going to send these documents out again. I'm going to stop screen sharing. And I'm going to bring the chat window back up. And I'm going to send these documents out again. Send file. The first one, 2018-04-26, getting out the vote. That's when it was written, which is why it has that number. Another one is the form that goes with it that you can use to keep track of the people who vote. That one is the GOTV form. And then the other one, which is not a WLN document, but there is some useful information there, is more ways to convince someone to vote. You are free to download these and distribute them without limit. They're not copyrighted, and use them to try and maximize the election. Next week, the training is going to be on how to campaign with little or no money. We've tried this before. We're refining it, adding some things, because there will still be some time to execute a campaign. Before we call this a session, I want to give folks one more chance to ask a question or offer a comment. Is there anything anyone else would like to say? Oh, Janet Bailey, that's who the iPhone is. Janet Bailey, welcome. Welcome, Janet. I'm glad you're able to make it today. Any other questions? Okay, well, we'll call this a session then. God bless all of you, and thank you for tuning in. And we look forward to seeing you next Saturday at 1 o'clock, same bat time, same bat channel. Take care.